tonight's tactical enhancement is more of the beer. And going by how well I went last game, I think the more tactical enhancement, the merrier. Need all the help I can get. Andrew has very kindly provided me with some new dice, which might help. The old ones were affectionately known as the traitors. But then I am playing against Andrew, so we'll see if these guys are perhaps deployed as foreign agents. Tonight we're playing Team Yankee, and it's a similar table configuration as last time, just tweaked a little bit. Tonight I'm fielding the US Marines against Andrew's very nicely painted Russian forces. Painted as East Germans, but they're officially Russian. And we're playing a free for all. That's what we rolled up. We both went with defend. But we're going to have to get out of our foxholes and make good. On my left flank, I've got a full Marine platoon maxed out, forward deployed as much as you're allowed to these days, with some lab support. And they'll either dig in or they'll make a beeline for that objective there and somehow survive the flying fuckload of Kalashnikovs in that little village, who will probably have a go at this objective. It's being held by some Stinger teams, but it turns out he didn't bring any air today, which is probably a good thing. On my right flank, holding down the other objective, is a full platoon of infantry, backed up by some VADs. Again, no air support, but those VADs can prove useful in dealing with infantry. And they're supported by a couple of transports. We've got a couple of Humvee missile teams here, tows, improved tows. You might find a target if they last long enough. And the choppers, which I think are supposed to start on table. May not be a great thing for me since Andrew's got the first turn, but we'll roll with it. They're on table, and there's some A10s off table that hopefully will turn up. Rightio, Andrew, can you talk us through what you've got?
Okay, on the right flank I've got all my transports. Their only function at the moment is to shoot the infantry when it comes through the forest, if they decide to come through the forest. In the centre is all of their infantry. At the moment they're hiding in the woods, but there's a very good avenue through planting, so they might do that.
Yes, lots of building hopping to do through here.
To their left is my first tank company, which are T-64s, with the battalion commander, who's right here. Next to them are the Shulkers, who will hopefully take some pot shots at some aircraft if they last long enough. Behind them to the left is the artillery. 6 hails today, so hopefully they do something if they can range in. And to their left is the rest of the T-64 battalion, last company, and hopefully they'll do a flanking manoeuvre.
Rightio, well, I'm sure they'll try. And over here we've got one of my objectives. I went in early on this game and I got the box sets with the special edition MI13 Command objectives. There's one there, and Andrew's other objective is over here. That's the one he's going to try the flanking manoeuvre for. This one's starting to look rather safe at the moment, but you know, I say that, but in a few turns that might not be the case. Anyway, we've rolled up first turn. First turn goes to Andrew, and we'll see if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's the end of the Russians' first turn. He's done a nice bold charge up the guts here with the tanks, with some infantry behind. His Shulkers advanced and wasted one of my choppers. Most irritating. And oh look, there's some flanking tanks being very sneaky behind the hill in the forest there. And now it's over to the American turn 1. We'll check in after that. Well, it's the end of turn 1. The Americans have done their best, and it was very mediocre. My infantry over here whiffed their skill checks, so they shot very ineffectively and basically had to go run hide in the forest. These guys whiffed their movement order, so I didn't get my alpha strike on the tanks. Very irritating. They just moved behind more cover. These VADs bogged, But these ones managed to move up and took out one shulker and bailed another. And these infantry dug in, which is probably the most competent thing that happened all turn. Very average. And the helicopters have gone to loiter off table, because until those A-10s come in to give them a hand, they're not going to have much luck against this air cover. Now it's over to the Russian turn 2. We're halfway through turn 2. It's the end of the Russian shooting, and they're starting to take a toll. These tanks have continued maneuvering around. They're a bit of a threat now, and they've lit up most of the labs. I mean, we'll see if they're still around at the end of the turn. My transports are bailed. All that flying fuckload of rocket fire from the Russians there didn't achieve a lot. These transports are sneaking forward. Now over here, the VADs unsurprisingly got ripped to shreds, but that's okay. We can afford to lose those. We just need to keep these bastards off the objectives, and for that I really need my air power to actually show up this turn. I'll check in at the end of turn 2. It's the end of turn 2 and the Americans are holding on, but they're not out of the woods yet. The toes managed to move out. They managed to get their shots. They got straight through the back armour of one of the T-64s and then double bailed it, and then of course he passed his morale. Bugger. Those Russian infantry took what I would call a flying fuck ton of fire. We killed one. They are thoroughly pinned. Over on the American right flank, well, the vehicles keep bogging in the woods, but the suicidal ones that have stepped forward to actually do anything did manage to clear up the last of the shulkers, which means that when I bring air on, they've got a running chance. The game is still on. I think the Russians still have the initiative, but it's not all over yet. It's the end of turn, what was that, turn 3 for the Russians. They've finished off another VADS. Couldn't call in the artillery because those tanks accidentally crept within the 6-inch safety margin. And if we move across, those infantry rallied, of course, took out a couple of LAVs, not LAVs, bloody whatever they are, those aquatic transports, and took out one of the Humvees over here. So we'll do a morale test on that guy. We'll have a morale test on this vehicle. Have to unpin these infantry. We lost a couple of chaps there on the rooftop from an extraordinary amount of 14.5mm fire from all those vehicles there. And more importantly, we'll now see if the bloody jets actually turn up. Okay, it's the end of turn 3 for the Americans, and frustration continues. That one last little poor bloke of a Humvee there, he hit, but he only bailed the tank, even though it's in the side armour. Choppers are in, but they can't do anything this turn, and of course the A-10s have not turned up for 3 turns in a fucking row. We've poured a whole lot of fire into those infantry, enough to pin them, but no kills. And these infantry refused to unpin, even with the company captain in the midst. He's probably ready to go commissar and start shooting a few lieutenants. They did manage to dig in though. So we're still holding on basically by the skin of our teeth. You can see the objective there, and those tanks are very close. We really need the A-10s to turn up and those helicopters to stay in the game. We'll see what we get. Okay, end of Russians turn 4. They're contesting the objective, but they haven't taken it yet. And they actually killed very little. They poured an awful lot of rounds all over the place. Killed 2 infantry from this platoon dug in on that objective. That won't be enough to let them through there. And it's pinch time. I really need some air power to actually fucking show up. Right, well, the Marines are still largely pinned, not really doing very much, which makes it very difficult for me to do anything about this objective with the tank sitting on it. The choppers moved into position and managed to get rounds off and killed one. Better than nothing, but it's looking very, very touch and go for the Marines at the moment. This is turning out to be a very standoff game. A few more infantry killed from the barrage, a few more vehicles bailed, awful lot of bailing going on. Over here, the SAM platoon, which is the only thing holding that objective together, is still here, which is quite remarkable. So it's into the American half of turn 4. Alright, it's the end of the Marines' turn. It's cutting it fine. Finally got my other Marine platoon to rally. Stopped rolling once. But even with good movement orders, I managed to whiff the shots with the Draggers into the side armour of some T-64s. Fortunately, I killed one and killed the commander and bailed one, so they're a bit touch and go at the moment. I could get lucky. It's really down to the wire on this objective. A whole lot of shooting into those infantry, and we just chipped away at them a little bit more. Nothing serious. Those transports ran away because one of them didn't get, the bailed one did not get back in, and these operational buddy decided not too hot for me, and he took off. So it's very close, and I continue to roll ones for the A10s. They've not turned up all game. We're in turn 4 or 5. We may have to execute the pilots.
Come down to the wire, I think.
Yes, I've had a reprieve. The Russians threw vast numbers of dice, including with the transport corral of the infantry speed hump, and they did absolutely nothing. It was a whiff. Fantastic. Gives me a chance. And at the start of the American turn, threats of execution have come good. The A10s have turned up. We're going to try and do some seed work on the remaining AA. Well, at the end of the Marines' turn, they are still holding on. They're now contesting the objective for next turn. Those 2 tanks are bailed. We don't know if they're going to get in or not, but we're probably going to call it at this point because it's getting on in hours and we've just been bashing our heads against each other and not killing a lot. On the plus side, the A10s who finally turned up, waded through an all of AA fire and killed some AA. So there's not much AA left on the table, which would be very useful if we had another couple of hours to try and finish this game. As it stands, the Russians have done a good hard push in the objectives, just not been able to crack the Marines. And the Marines have thrown everything they've got at the Russians and just not been able to kill enough. Well, that's the ones who actually turned up and weren't pinned for most of the game. So it's been a game of lots of 1s and 2s. Not quite the casualty count we would have assumed we would have had at this point in the day. So that'll be a tie. What do you reckon? Should we call it a tie?
Neither of us won.
No, neither of us won. Well,
not without trying.
With the sheer volume of dice we've been throwing at each other, you'd think it would have done a bit more. Yeah, some very interesting manoeuvring from Andrew there. Blitzed right the way through the town, along those roads there from at the back. And his flank attack did flank. But we're finding the limitations of Russian artillery. The difficulty of working around a barrage template with a 6-inch clearance zone around it. Very tricky. Well, that's it. It's the end of another game. Nice to see Andrew's Russians on the table. Looking very pretty. I'll have to get off my ass and finish the Marines. So, what did we learn?
Stay 6 inches away from your own templates. So a bit of re-education on artillery. US Marines are really tough. They are tough infantry.
Yes, they are.
I'm not pretty happy with the Russians, actually. I thought they did pretty well, considering most of my conscripts.
I thought they did very well. You used your tanks as only a tanker will.
Straight up the guts.
Yes, in ways that, what was it you said? You get court-martialed if you did that in the real world.
Yeah.
Yes, well, for my part, I've learned that Threatening to execute your pilots more often actually makes them turn up more often. We had what 6 turns this game, thereabouts?
6 turns and they showed up once.
Yeah, I think we'll still execute them. On that note, I think it's time to call it a night. If you've gotten this far, thanks for watching, and maybe we'll do another one.